Hey guys, tonight we wake up in a place so far removed from our modern comforts that even your worst camping trip would feel like a 5-star hotel in comparison. Picture this. You stir from sleep, not to the buzz of an alarm clock, but to the relentless bleating of a goat directly outside your window. If you can even call a hole in a mud wall a window, your bedding, a worn mat laid over hardened earth, possibly shared with a sibling or 3. Welcome to your new life in a Sumerian mudbrick house. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Drop it in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first breath you take is thick with dust. You blink against the dim light streaming in from a tiny hole near the roof. There's no glass, just a clay-framed aperture the size of your forearm, barely enough to let light in but perfectly designed to let flies in droves swarm your face. You sit up slowly, your muscles stiff from sleeping on the compacted dirt floor. The air is already warm, humid, dense, with that unmistakable musk of sweat, smoke and... goat again. You rub your eyes. No toothbrush, no tap water. Instead, you grab a small linen cloth, frayed at the edges, and dab at your face. Bathing isn't part of the morning ritual here. That's more of a festival luxury, assuming the river hasn't dried up again. You glance around your one-room home. The ceiling is low and flat, made from bundled reeds smeared with thick layers of mud plaster. You're grateful it didn't collapse in the night. Outside, the early morning sounds of the city of Ur stir like a sluggish animal. Donkeys bray in the distance. The grumble of stone wheels grinding along packed earth roads echoes faintly. Someone yells, probably about a runaway goat. You hear your mother coughing in the corner near the hearth pit, where a clay pot still smoulders from the previous night's fire. Your first job? Stir the ashes, rekindle the fire, and get the smoke going again. The Sumerians cooked indoors using open fire pits, which means the entire house fills with smoke thick enough to sting your eyes and cling to your clothes for hours. Ventilation? If you're lucky, the smoke goes out the hole in the roof. If not, it just gathers around your head like a warm, asphyxiating scarf. You crouch next to the fire pit and blow gently onto the embers. With enough luck and coughing, you get it going again. The smoke begins to rise, mixing with the smell of last night's stew. Goat meat, maybe, or lentils, though most of what's left is congealed fat and bones. Scholars remain divided on whether breakfast was a formal meal or more of a grab-what-you-can situation. Today, it's the latter. You nibble on a dry barley cake, roughly the texture of a brick and the flavour of last week's sandals. There's no milk, the goat hasn't been cooperative, but there is some leftover date beer, flat and warm, in a clay jar near the door. You sip it like it's your only option, because it is. Your home, made from thousands of hand-shaped mud bricks, looks solid from the outside, but inside it's just a fragile shell. The bricks, sun-dried and stacked with bitumen mortar, were revolutionary for their time. They insulated from the blazing sun and were cheap to produce. That's your consolation as you swat a beetle crawling up your leg. Mud brick innovation, meat living infestation. There's a myth that all ancient homes were pristine temples of domesticity. The truth? Your house is a living ecosystem. Insects, mice, the occasional snake, and your uncle snoring in the corner are just part of daily life. You shift aside a clay bowl and startle a pair of cockroaches, which scurry into the wall crevices like they're late for a ritual sacrifice. Your family, like most others, sleeps communally. Space is tight, maybe 15 square meters in total, and privacy is something you've only heard about from merchants who've travelled far. Your parents, siblings, and possibly an aging aunt all live under one roof, sharing the same air, the same food, and unfortunately the same latrine schedule. Oh, and about that toilet? We'll get to that nightmare in the next section. For now, you're still waking up. If waking up can be defined as being physically vertical and mentally resentful. Outside, the street is already coming alive. Neighbours greet each other with half-hearted grunts. A priest from the local temple strolls past in his ceremonial robes, trailing incense and murmuring prayers to Nana, the moon god. You quickly bow your head. It's best not to draw divine attention before you've even had a proper stretch. Fun fact, Sumerians believed household misfortunes were often caused by offending a god, maybe by stepping on the wrong bug or sneezing at an inopportune moment. Your family keeps a small shrine near the hearth, with crude carvings and a dried lizard offering just in case. Experts still debate whether these were genuine acts of faith or more of a cosmic insurance policy. Either way, you mumble a sleepy prayer to whichever deity governs roasted barley. You step outside for a moment, blinking against the rising sun. The city smells of wet clay, smoke, animal droppings, and humanity packed too close together for too long. There's no breeze, no birdsong, just the low rumble of survival gearing up for another exhausting day. You glance back at your house, your fortress of soggy walls and low ceilings, and think, well, at least it hasn't collapsed. Yet. But the floor's moving again, and this time that centipede has friends. Welcome to morning in Sumer. You shuffle to your feet and immediately regret it. The floor beneath you squishes slightly, never a good sign in a house made of dirt. You look down and spot it. Movement. Just the tail end of something long, jointed and far too confident in its sense of belonging. You freeze, then another one, and another. Turns out your floor has more legs than your entire family combined. See, in Sumer, mudbrick homes double as insect hotels. They retain moisture beautifully, great for preventing fire, not so great when it's hosting a micro-jungle in your living space. The compacted earth floor isn't sealed with anything except hope, and maybe a few scattered reeds. So beetles, centipedes, ants, and the occasional small scorpion are just part of the scenery. You're not living above nature, you're embedded in it. You try to swat one away with a reed broom, but it just slithers into a crack like it pays rent there. Scholars still debate whether Sumerians attempted any sort of consistent pest control beyond burning incense and sweeping things into corners. One fringe theory even suggests they bred cats not just for companionship, but as early pest managers. But as of this morning, no feline has shown up to rescue you. Your younger sibling is still asleep, splayed out on the other end of the mat, mouth open, attracting flies like a warm date cake. You toss a piece of dried fig at them, half out of affection, half out of petty vengeance for the snoring, and step toward the far corner of the room where daylight cuts in from a slit between bricks. You step on something soft. It's not a blanket. It moves. The thing is, in a Sumerian household, especially one lacking wealth or temple connections, your living environment is just a few centimeters removed from the street, and the street is, in all senses, alive. Stray dogs sniff around for scraps, rodents skitter beneath woven baskets, and insects go about their ancient, uninterrupted business. Your home doesn't repel nature, it hosts it. One of the few tools you have to battle the infestation is ash. You scoop some from the hearth and sprinkle it across a patch of floor near your sleeping area. Supposedly the texture irritates crawling insects. That, or it just gives them a new place to roll around before marching across your face again. Opinions vary. The mud-brick walls, once fresh and geometric, have eroded with time. Moisture from the rainy season left blotchy patterns and crumbling patches where little beetle-sized doorways open into the wall. You've tried stuffing them with straw or smashed pottery shards, but the critters always find a way. They're survivors, just like you're supposed to be. You glance up at the ceiling. There's a crack in one of the reed beams. A small heap of dust falls and lands in your hair. You sigh and brush it off, hoping it's not from termite activity again. Your uncle once had a whole ceiling collapse on him while he was napping. Not fatally, but his ego never recovered. The strangest part, you're used to this. You've stopped screaming at insects. You just make space. The real crisis only starts when the floor stops moving. That usually means something larger is nesting, like the time your cousin found a snake coiled under the grain jar. No one slept in that house for a week, not until the local priest chanted the demon away. Or possibly just scared the snake off by shouting at it. The story varies depending on who's telling it. Fringe records suggest that certain Sumerian households kept charms or carved amulets near doorways to ward off crawling creatures. One clay figurine unearthed in a household shrine even shows what appears to be a multi-legged creature being stabbed by a tiny god. Was it protection, or just someone commemorating a really bad morning? You step toward the doorframe where a curtain of woven reeds hangs limply, buzzing with tiny gnats. As you push it aside, a coolish gust of air brushes your face. Cool only because the inside was so thick and warm it practically had its own gravity. The outside air is still heavy with heat, but at least it moves. You inhale deeply and cough immediately. The wind carries dust, livestock stink, and the delicate aroma of your neighbour's cesspit. Back inside, Your mother is already grinding barley on a basalt slab, her arms moving in slow practice circles. She hums an old lullaby, one with no known words, just vowel sounds stretched across a tune older than writing itself. You'd help, but the floor still hasn't finished squirming, and there's a centipede that seems especially territorial this morning. Fun historical fact: Sumerians were some of the earliest to invent writing, cuneiform, pressed into clay tablets, but they didn't use it to record household horrors or complaints about insects. No yelp for vermin here, mostly debts, trade records, prayers and inventories, which is a shame because your daily battle with household pests would have made for some truly relatable clay literature. You decide to stamp your foot once, hard, everything goes still. Then, like an insult, the smallest beetle you've ever seen slowly marches across your toe and disappears into the ash pile like it owns the place. You surrender. With dignity, of course. As you crouch to fetch a reed basket from beneath a wooden bench, you spot something new. A nest of sorts. Straw, dust, and eggs. Tiny, opaque eggs glistening faintly in the morning light. You stare. They stare back, silently threatening to hatch during tonight's sleep. You call for your older brother. He inspects the spot and announces with complete confidence, "That's probably the demon of itchy feet." You both laugh, but only for a moment. There's just enough unease in his voice to make you check your sandals before putting them on. By the time you've swept, stomped, and stared down the morning's crawling population, the sun has crested over the ziggurat in the distance, casting its golden light across the clay rooftops. Life outside has resumed. Kids chase goats, merchants bark about fish, and a stray dog trots by with a loaf of stolen bread in its mouth. And still, the floor moves. You shuffle outside, hoping for a moment of peace, but nature has other plans. Your stomach cramps gently. No surprise after last night's lentils that tasted slightly cursed. You've been trying to ignore the growing urgency, but now it's unavoidable. You need to relieve yourself. And here comes your first big reality check. There's no private bathroom waiting for you. In fact, the phrase personal hygiene has yet to be invented. You step around a pile of goat droppings and head down the narrow alley between houses. The walls of neighbouring homes rise high and tight on either side, casting jagged shadows that do nothing to cool the air. The smell hits you like a brick to the face. Pungent, warm, unmistakably human. Your neighbourhood shares one latrine, a cesspit behind the cluster of houses, enclosed only by some reeds and a low mud wall. No roof, no door, no dignity. As you approach, you realise two other people are already waiting, both pretending they aren't desperate. One is humming nervously, the other is trying to make eye contact with a lizard. You wait, and you wait. The flies don't. Eventually it's your turn. You step inside, if you can call stepping behind some crumbling reeds, inside, and you're immediately assaulted by a buzzing swarm of insects who apparently believe this pit is their ancestral temple. You cover your nose with your sleeve, squat, and try to find a position that doesn't involve touching anything. The Sumerians didn't use toilet paper. They had smooth pebbles, bits of broken pottery, yikes, or occasionally reeds or cloth scraps, depending on availability and how much pain you could tolerate that morning. You opt for a flat stone and try not to overthink what you're doing. The pit itself is a marvel of community engineering, a shallow trench that's regularly filled with ashes or sand to mask the smell. When it overflows, someone is assigned to dig a new one. That someone could easily be you if you mess up your chores again. Experts still debate whether early Mesopotamians practiced any form of organised sanitation beyond the ash pits. Some evidence suggests they used diverted rainwater channels to wash away waste from wealthier homes. But for commoners like you, it's all very hands-on. You finish as fast as you can and step out, grateful for the return of relatively breathable air. The person behind you offers a pained smile before vanishing into the reeds like a doomed soul. There's no soap. You wipe your hands on a patch of dry earth and sprinkle a little ash to mask the scent. Hygiene is mostly ritual in Sumer. You occasionally rinse your hands in water, if there's any. But it's often the same water you use to rinse your cooking tools, your laundry and maybe your feet. Germ theory hasn't been invented, but your nose has its suspicions. You make your way back home, passing an older woman dumping a bucket of greyish water into the street. It trickles down toward the canal that eventually leads back to the river. Yes, the same river you drink from, the same river you bathe in, the same river everyone dumps their waste into. It's a full circle kind of ecosystem. You pause by the edge of the nearest drainage channel watching a pale frog hop between puddles. It's strangely comforting. Life persists, even here, where disease dances invisibly in every drop. A fun, if slightly disgusting fact. Some Sumerians believed illness was caused by evil spirits that entered the body through unclean places, especially the mouth and nose. To ward them off, they sometimes chewed certain resins or burned aromatic herbs. One fringe belief even involved chanting while squatting, to confuse the spirit. You mutter a few words just in case. Nothing fancy, just something you heard your aunt say once after a bad fish stew. Back inside the house, your mother is now tending to the hearth, her hands blackened with soot. She offers you a clay jug of water to rinse your mouth. You take a sip. It's warm and slightly gritty, but the taste is better than your breath. The mid-morning heat is already setting in, and with it, a new awareness of just how many layers of grime have settled onto your skin. But bathing isn't in the cards today, not unless someone dies and the family needs a ritual cleansing, or unless a priest tells you a spirit is nesting in your hair. Short of that, you're on your own. You grab a piece of linen and scrub at your arms. It helps. A little. The priest from earlier walks by again, this time with a pair of young boys in tow. He's explaining something about purity and the river spirits. You catch a few words and make a mental note to avoid the canal today. Rumours are flying about an outbreak of something. Feverish shakes, vomiting, people unable to walk straight. You try to pretend it's just gossip, but your neighbour's child looked pale yesterday. Scholars remain divided on just how much the average Sumerian understood about the relationship between waste and disease. While they lacked modern science, they weren't clueless. Ritual cleansing and urban planning show that cleanliness had value. It just wasn't always practical. You return to your family's home, only to discover that the goat has knocked over one of the storage jars. Barley is everywhere, and the dog is trying to eat it. Your mother lets out a sigh that could crack a ziggurat and sends you back outside to fetch more water. Of course she does. You haven't even digested breakfast, or whatever that dry barley slab counted as. As you grab the empty jug and prepare to face the sweltering sun, you glance once more at the far corner of the room, where a suspiciously large beetle now occupies the spot your foot usually goes. Between the insects, the cesspit, and the rising heat, one thing is certain. You're not even halfway through the morning, and you're already questioning your life choices. You hoist the clay water jug onto your shoulder and step out once more into the already blazing heat. It's not yet noon, but the sun in Sumer doesn't wait to make its presence known. It punches down through the dust-filled sky with the enthusiasm of a vengeful god, and honestly, most days, it feels personal. Your destination, the communal well, a good 15-minute walk away if you're lucky, or 30 if the goats block the path again. You trudge past houses that look just like yours, cracked walls, sagging roofs, and smoke curling from the occasional reed chimney. Every so often, someone nods or grunts a sleepy greeting. You return the favour, gripping the jug tighter. Breakfast hasn't exactly energised you. The lingering taste of barley cake still sticks in your molars, dry and chewy like fibrous mud. And that date beer? It's sloshing quietly in your stomach like a bad idea trying to ferment into a worse one. There's a street vendor selling what passes for fruit, mostly dried figs, some shriveled plums, and one suspiciously mouldy pomegranate. You pause, consider trading the cracked bead in your pouch for a fig, then think better of it. That fig may have seen the reign of 3 kings. You keep walking. Eventually the well comes into view, a modest stone structure surrounded by a half-circle of equally exhausted people. A line has already formed, and not one person looks thrilled to be there. You join the queue and balance the jug on your hip, adjusting your headscarf to shade your neck. The air smells of warm stone, sweat, and a hint of donkey dung. Someone behind you is complaining about the taxes on grain. Someone else is loudly chewing a reed stalk, snapping it every few seconds like a metronome of irritation. You smile politely and stare ahead, hoping no one talks to you. Your turn arrives. You lower the bucket, which is attached to a long rope that's seen better decades. It creaks, groans, and finally splashes down. You draw the water up carefully, one tug at a time, hand over hand. The jug fills slowly. You can already feel the heat of the clay against your hip, warming the water before you've even taken 5 steps. Scholars are fairly certain that water access in early Mesopotamian cities was communal. though larger homes might have had private cisterns. For everyone else, it's queues, buckets, and hope. You lift the jug, now considerably heavier, and begin your slow return. You've done this route 100 times, maybe more, but it never gets easier. The jug digs into your shoulder, the strap rubs raw against your collarbone. You shift your grip, trying to find that elusive balance point between pain and slightly less pain. Halfway home, you pass a scribe sitting cross-legged in a shaded alcove, stylus in hand, carving cuneiform into a fresh clay tablet. He's surrounded by clay shards and half-finished contracts. You pause, curious. He's muttering something about missing sheep and compensation. Fun fact: scribes were the rock stars of ancient Sumer. Highly respected, well-educated, and typically exempt from the worst of physical labour. They could read, write, and calculate, which made them invaluable in everything from temple management to grain accounting. You wonder what it'd be like to trade places. Then you remember, they have to deal with angry merchants and temple taxes. You reach your street again, shoulders aching, when a small boy darts out of nowhere and nearly collides with you. Your jug wobbles dangerously, you steady it just in time. The boy's chasing a chicken, and the chicken is winning. Back at the house, your mother nods in approval when you set down the jug. Still full, she remarks, eyeing the water level with suspicion. Not bad for someone who walks like a sunstroked ox. You've learned to take that as a compliment. She dips a ladle into the jug and pours some into a wide basin. You splash your face with it, the coolness a tiny miracle. For a moment it almost feels refreshing, until the water drips down and collects dust from your chest and arms, turning into mud streaks across your skin. A rinse, not a solution. Experts still debate whether Sumerians boiled their water regularly or just relied on ritual purification. Evidence suggests they preferred settling and straining, using cloth, reeds, or gravity, and left the rest to faith. You've tasted boiled water once. It smelled like burnt reeds and disappointment. As midday approaches, breakfast technically begins. You sit cross-legged on a mat while your mother lays out the offerings. Another barley cake, this one even harder, a spoonful of soft lentils, probably safe-ish, and some crushed dates. It's not exciting, but it's food. And in a society where famine is always lurking a failed harvest away, you don't complain. Well, not out loud. You chew slowly. The lentils are overly salted, probably to preserve them longer. Your tongue puckers slightly. You chase the taste with a sip of lukewarm date beer. It's flat, but has a strange sweetness that lingers like an awkward compliment. Quirky tidbit. Some households believed in chanting small blessings before eating, not to thank the gods, but to trick jealous spirits into thinking the meal was already cursed. You hum a few notes. It can't hurt. Outside, a goat climbs onto the roof of your neighbour's house. No one is surprised. Mudbrick roofs are flat and often used as sleeping spaces, grain-drying zones, and apparently goat playgrounds. The animal stomps happily across the edge, knocking down a few reeds. Someone shouts. The goat bleats like it couldn't care less. You scrape the last of the lentils from your bowl with a corner of a barley cake, and wonder if this is what full feels like. You're not sure. You're not hungry anymore, but you're definitely not satisfied either. Sumerian cuisine is many things. Memorable, fibrous, occasionally fermented, but never decadent. As you set your bowl aside, you feel a familiar gurgle. That lentil gamble might have been a losing hand after all. You make eye contact with the jug of water. It looks back at you, unbothered, silent, slightly dusty. Breakfast is over. Your stomach is suspicious. The sun is now directly overhead, and the walls of your mud brick house begin to radiate heat inward. Welcome to midday in ancient Sumer, where even your food turns against you. By now the sun has declared total dominance. The sky has bleached itself into a pale, merciless glare, and your house, once merely unpleasant, is now actively hostile. The mud brick walls, which earlier held in the cool of night, are now exhaling pure heat. It's like living inside a clay oven, and you're the day's undercooked offering. You try to find shade. Joke's on you. There isn't any. The small slit windows don't open. They just hint at light. Airflow is more of a wish than a function. You crack open the reed curtain at the doorway, hoping to catch a breeze, but outside it's even worse. The wind has turned into a dry, dusty breath, hot enough to toast a fig. You retreat back inside where the heat clings to every surface. The floor's warm, the walls are warm, your wooden bowl is warm, You're warm, and not in the good, cozy way. You sit perfectly still, hoping motionlessness will somehow convince the air not to oppress you. Fun fact, Sumerian architecture was surprisingly adaptive. Builders used thick, sun-dried bricks and oriented buildings to minimize sun exposure. Roofs were flat and often used for sleeping during summer nights, because inside things got unbearable. Unfortunately, you're stuck inside for now, waiting out the worst of the midday burn while dreaming of elevation. You glance up toward the ceiling. A set of clay stairs leads to your rooftop, but the roof's already packed with drying grain. Plus, the family goat's up there again, and you don't have the energy for another stair down. Instead, you lie back against a mat and try to nap. You immediately regret it. The floor radiates heat like it's being paid for the effort. You toss, turn, sweat, and eventually give up. There is no escape. You and the heat are now one entity. A neighbour wanders by and calls out to your mother, asking if anyone has spare bitumen. You blink blearily. Bitumen, sticky black pitch used for sealing walls, waterproofing boats and mending cracks in bricks, smells like the inside of a demon's oven. Your mother yells back that she has none, then mutters under her breath about the neighbour always needing something. You sit upright, gasping softly. Your shirt clings to your back like damp bark. There's no such thing as dry anymore, just different flavours of sticky. You try fanning yourself with a piece of woven reed. It doesn't help. It only wafts hot air back into your face like a taunt. Your younger sibling has resorted to laying belly down on the floor like a wilted radish. You both exchange exhausted glances. Nothing needs to be said. The mutual suffering is understood. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Sumerians apparently use clay pots filled with water and strategically place them around the room to cool the air slightly through evaporation. You try it now. You place one near the doorway and hope for a miracle. It just sits there, radiating vague disappointment. You finally head for the stairs. The idea of goat confrontation is more appealing than slow cooking on the floor. Each step up the narrow spiralling staircase adds to your disorientation. The air is heavier up here, somehow thicker. You push open the reed trapdoor and emerge onto the roof. It's blinding. The light reflects off pale clay and baskets of drying barley. A goat blinks at you in lazy defiance and continues chewing on your sandal. You stare. It stares back. You both decide to ignore each other. There's a thin strip of shade near the grain jars. You collapse into it, pulling a scrap of linen over your eyes. For one brief, blissful moment, you forget that you live in a house where the floor fights back and the ceiling leaks dust. A low moan drifts from a neighbouring rooftop. Someone singing, or complaining, it's hard to tell which. A few kids laugh from a distant alley. You hear a clay jug shatter somewhere down below, followed by an explosion of very creative cursing. Life in the city of never actually stops. It just simmers. You close your eyes and let your thoughts melt into the shimmering air. For a moment you imagine water. Cool, clear, endless water. Maybe from the Euphrates. Maybe from a dream. Either way, it's not this sticky, muddy, goat-scented reality. Experts still debate whether Sumerians truly rested during midday, or powered through it with sheer stubbornness. Some believe a form of midday break, akin to a proto-siesta, existed, especially during harvest seasons. Others argue that work just shifted to shaded areas or happened in bursts between heat spikes. You're going with the siesta theory. Emotionally. The goat sneezes, you flinch. It snorts at you, then moves closer, clearly unbothered by the fact that it smells like every bad decision you've ever made. You scoot slightly away. It scoots closer. You sigh and accept that personal space doesn't exist in this timeline. Down below, someone's pounding grain. The rhythmic thudding floats up like a heartbeat. You hear the squeal of a cartwheel, then a merchant shouting something about fish so fresh they still bite. You do not want to know what that means. Eventually the shadows stretch. The sun lowers by a fraction, just enough to turn the oven into a sauna. You take it as a win. You descend back into the house. The air is still thick, but not quite as punishing. Your mother nods to you and gestures toward the hearth. Time to prepare the evening meal. You wipe your forehead with the edge of your tunic, which by now smells like lentils, soot, and faint goat musk. You glance again at the cracked walls, the dust floating lazily in the shafts of sunlight, and the jug of lukewarm water by the door. It's been a long, boiling day, and you haven't even started the hard work yet. There's no such thing as a to-do list in Sumer, just a never-ending loop of physical torment politely referred to as daily tasks. As the worst of the midday heat begins to ease, slightly, you're handed a reed basket and an expression from your mother that says, plainly, don't come back until it's full. You already know what's next, chores that would break a donkey's spirit. You begin with water fetching round 2, because the single jug from this morning barely covered breakfast, dishwashing, and the goat knocking it over while trying to eat a fig out of your sister's hand. The jug is heavier now, not because it's full, but because you're heavier, with fatigue, dust, and the creeping sense of a sun-induced existential crisis. When you return, arms wobbling like overcooked lentils, the day's true agony begins. Dung patting. Yes, you heard that right. In a world without gas, coal, or even dependable firewood, dried animal dung is fuel, and someone has to gather it, shape it, and slap it against the outer wall to dry. Today that someone is you. You crouch in the yard with a flat paddle and begin scooping up yesterday's goat droppings. There's a system to this. You mash the dung with a bit of straw and water, not the clean water obviously, then press it into flat sun-drying cakes. You pat them onto the outer wall of your home, where they'll slowly crisp in the sun over the next few days like very unappetizing pancakes. The goat eyes you while chewing cud. You make eye contact and mutter, "This is your fault." It blinks, unbothered. Scholars remain divided on whether dung fuel was used primarily for cooking, heating, or both. Archaeological remains of hearths suggest that it was a multi-purpose solution, though no one's quite sure how they endured the smell. You'd like to weigh in on that debate, but your nose has already gone numb out of self-defense. Next, it's grain-grinding duty. You move inside, your arms tingling from all the patting, and kneel by the grindstone, a flat basalt slab and a heavy handheld stone you'll be wrestling for the next hour. You pour in the dry barley and begin the rhythmic drag-scrape-drag pattern that your elbows already resent. The stone groans under your weight, and barley dust kicks up into the air, coating your face with a fine, flowery mask. Quirky tidbit. Some early Sumerian households employed slaves or servants to do this work, especially in wealthier temples or palatial homes. But for regular families, it's all hands and knees on deck. The motion is hypnotic. It lulls your thoughts into strange places. You picture yourself as the barley, slowly ground down one pass at a time. Your hands blister. Your back protests. You switch arms and try to remember a song your grandmother used to sing while grinding. Something about a barley spirit that would curse you if you didn't hum. You hum badly. The barley flour is finally ready. Your mother inspects it, nods once, and starts kneading it into dough with water, herbs, and whatever's left of yesterday's sour starter. Bread won't be ready until dusk, so in the meantime you're tasked with, guess what? More chores. The floor needs sweeping. Again. Not because anyone spilled anything, but because dust exists, and in Sumer, that's enough to cause a floor to develop texture overnight. You grab your reed broom and sweep from corner to corner, trying not to inhale too much of the fine silt that floats up in golden clouds. You've long given up the idea of a clean floor. Your goal now is simply to discourage small wildlife from setting up camp. You find a dead beetle in the corner and a lizard tail with no lizard. You sweep both out the door with as much ceremony as you can muster. Your cousin appears at the door asking if you have any spare linen thread. You don't, but your mother gestures to the old cloak in the corner, the one that now functions as both rag and emergency towel. Your cousin accepts it and vanishes with a muttered thanks. That was your only semi-clean surface. You eye the goat again, it's still chewing your sandal. Finally, your mother announces it's time to fetch reeds. Because of course it is. You and your sibling head to the riverbank with a small sickle. The Euphrates gleams in the fading light, and the reeds sway gently in the afternoon breeze. It would almost be peaceful, if not for the mosquitoes, the mud that sucks at your feet like it's trying to adopt you, and the ever-present threat of stepping on something venomous. Reeds are used for everything: bedding, baskets, writing tablets, fences, and sometimes even roofing. You slice as many as your arms can carry, careful to bundle them tightly so they don't slip. Your hands sting from small cuts. Your feet squelch with each step back. On the way home, you pass a boy chasing a dog that's run off with someone's laundry. The city is full of that kind of energy, chaotic, dirty, endlessly alive. A girl sits weaving reed mats with a look of deep concentration. An old man snores in the shade of a date palm. and in the distance temple bells chime faintly, calling worshippers for the evening ritual. You return with your bundle, drop it near the hearth and collapse onto the mat inside. You smell like a blend of river mud, barley, goat and despair. Your hands are raw, your knees gritty. You don't even care that a beetle is walking across your ankle. You name it Barry and let it be. Experts still debate whether daily life in Sumer was harder than in later civilizations. Certainly the innovations were impressive, writing, city planning, irrigation, but the human workload remained relentless. You can invent the wheel, but you still have to roll it uphill. As the sky darkens and the day winds toward its sluggish end, you stare up at the cracked ceiling and whisper to no one in particular, "Please don't let tomorrow involve more dung." But you already know the answer. You've just collapsed from a full day of dung, dust and divine indifference when your nose reminds you of a truth you've been politely ignoring. You stink, and not in a quirky, "oh, I sweated a little" way. No, you carry the full bouquet of a life spent elbow deep in mud, grain, smoke, and things that should never have been touched, let alone inhaled. Your armpits have joined forces with your scalp to stage a sensory protest. Your tunic is damp, stained, and crunches slightly when you move, which is deeply concerning. But here's the real kicker. Bathing is not an option, not a regular one at least. You trudge outside into the dusk hoping for a breeze. There is one. It's carrying the unmistakable scent of livestock and cooking fish. So, progress. Sumerians did bathe, but not daily. The process took effort, time, and sometimes religious permission. River baths were the most accessible option, but only when the tides and temple schedules allowed it. You've had 2 baths this month. One was after a fever. The other was because your aunt insisted you smelled like a sick donkey in heat. You glance toward the clay jug in the corner. It's filled with water so murky it probably contains a full resume of invisible organisms. You use it anyway. A rag, a splash, and some focused scrubbing around your face and arms. It's not much, but it's better than being mistaken for a burnt reed. A fringe theory suggests Sumerians sometimes perfumed themselves with resin or oils. You have neither. You have ash. You rub a little under your arms and hope it absorbs something besides your pride. Your sister walks in, sniffs, and immediately walks out. You consider this confirmation. By twilight, the hearth is active again, this time for bread baking and boiling lentils. The smoke curls lazily upward, sticking to the walls like a memory. You sit cross-legged and help fan the flames while your mother shapes dough into rough patties and lays them on the hot stone. You're sweaty, you're tired, and worst of all, you're itchy. You scratch your arm, then your shoulder, then your scalp, then your ankle. It spreads like wildfire. You glance down your tunic, no visible bugs, but you feel them. Experts still debate whether lice were as common in Sumer as later societies like medieval Europe. But most agree, if humans lived together, shared bedding, and rarely bathed, lice were likely constant, unwelcome roommates. You try not to think about it too much. It only makes the itching worse. "Don't scratch," your mother says calmly, not looking up. "You'll wake them." You're not sure if she's joking. Dinner arrives in the form of lentils, flatbread, and, if you're lucky, a pickled onion. You eat in silence, chewing slowly, trying not to taste the cooking smoke that's already embedded in every bite. The lentils are soft but bland. The bread is hot at least, and you tear into it like it owes you money. Your father returns from work, supervising irrigation ditches today, which is just a fancier way of saying yelling at reeds and falling into water. He smells worse than you. You feel better by comparison. You all eat together, seated in a loose circle on the packed floor. No tables, no plates, just shared bowls and soft grunts of approval when the bread isn't burned. You scratch discreetly. Everyone's scratching. It's like a slow, itchy symphony. A stray dog noses its way into the doorway. Your mother throws a pebble at it. It runs, but not far. You know it'll be back once the bowls are empty. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Sumerian households trained monkeys to help with basic chores. Whether this was a regional practice or the world's earliest form of desperate parenting remains unclear. You wish you had a monkey, at the very least someone else to blame for the lice. After dinner, your mother wipes the bowls clean with a bit of leftover bread and sets them aside. There's no formal dishwashing, just the hope that burning ash and thyme will sanitize things enough. You pour the rest of the water over your hands and pat them dry on your tunic. The tunic doesn't notice. It gave up an hour ago. You settle in for the night, stretching out on the mat with a sigh. The house is cooler now, but the air is still thick. You roll onto your side and try not to think about the bugs you definitely didn't see earlier. You itch again. Your brother next to you mumbles in his sleep and scratches too. Misery does love company. Outside, the city of hums quietly. People are finishing their chores, saying evening prayers or arguing about goats. Somewhere a baby cries. Somewhere else, a drum thumps faintly. Someone's celebrating a birth, or maybe just distracting themselves from the lice. Your mother sprinkles a bit of crushed herb near the doorway, muttering a small protection chant. Scholars remain divided on whether these household rituals were believed to genuinely ward off disease or simply provided emotional comfort. You don't care either way. If the herb wants to fight the itch demons, it's welcome to try. As you drift towards sleep, you feel a slow, deliberate crawl near your ear. You slap it. Too slow. You stare into the dark. Tomorrow, you swear, you'll find that goat and bathe in the river, spirits or no spirits, unless it rains. Or the fish sellers dump waste again, or the priest says you can't. So probably not. Morning again. Or at least a vague lightness seeps into the room like a sluggish ghost, nudging you out of half sleep. You're not sure how long you were unconscious, what with the heat, the scratching, and someone snoring like a drowning frog. But here you are, alive. It's debatable whether that's good news. The first sound you register is the high-pitched bleating of a goat right outside the doorway. Then comes the wail of your neighbour's infant. Then your cousin hollers something about missing sandals, followed by what is probably an insult involving a fish and someone's mother. You sit up slowly, the mat's texture now etched permanently into your side. Your neck feels twisted, your eyes itch, and the back of your throat tastes like a clay pot gave you attitude in your dreams. This is Sumerian suburbia, not quiet, not peaceful, and definitely not tranquil. Noise is the wallpaper of your life. As you stretch your arms and crack your back in at least 3 unwanted places, the chorus continues. Goats bleat like broken instruments. Chickens squawk with what you assume is murderous intent. Someone drops a jar, and the crash echoes like divine punishment. You stand, duck under the low ceiling, and nearly trip over your brother, who's still asleep and fully entangled in the family's only halfway decent linen. You nudge him with your foot. He groans. You both pretend that counts as communication. Outdoors, the street is already in full chaotic swing. Children dart barefoot between piles of refuse, chasing each other with reeds or screaming about imagined dragons. Traders are setting up stalls, shouting their wares in loud, overlapping chants that all seem to feature the word fresh, even when applied to dried fish that's clearly seen several epochs. You pass a potter with a cart full of lopsided jugs. He's singing, loudly, badly. You make eye contact. He winks. You regret everything. Sumerian cities were dense, organic mazes, no neat grid planning here. Streets twist between houses, widen into courtyards, then narrow again until only goats can pass comfortably, which, judging by their omnipresence, is the intended design. You return inside with a handful of reeds to patch a hole in the mat. As you weave them, your uncle arrives to visit and bring news, by which, of course, he means gossip. Apparently a neighbour's son was caught stealing figs and blamed it on a talking jackal. The elders are debating whether to beat him, bless him, or make him a priest. This is a real conversation. You nod solemnly while your mother raises an eyebrow and mutters, "The jackal's probably smarter than his father." Noise isn't just a side effect of life in a Sumerian city, it is life. There are no glass windows, no insulation, no doors with hinges. Sound travels freely, joyously, through walls, alleys, and your eardrums. You learn to interpret the sounds. A heavy pot hitting stone means someone's cooking. 2 sharp claps and a yell mean someone's goat escaped. A rhythmic thump? That's someone pounding grain or a child jumping on the roof, or both. Scholars agree that the constant bustle of urban noise was a key feature of Mesopotamian life. In fact, some religious texts even include complaints about noise, priests lamenting that the gods are troubled by the clamour of mortals. You relate deeply. Your father, back from the temple precincts, announces it's time to take grain to the market. You groan inwardly and begin preparing the bundle. As you wrap it in linen and tie it with twine, the potter down the road starts singing again. Louder this time. Is he doing it on purpose? You pass by him on your way out, giving a tight-lipped smile. "Lovely voice," you say, flatly. He beams. A child in his doorway howls with laughter. As you walk toward the city centre, the noise crescendos. There's a heated argument between two women over who owns a duck. A priest is chanting in Sumerian from the temple steps. Slow, booming syllables that echo through the stone colonnade. A merchant claps loudly every few seconds to attract attention to his cart of miracle reeds. They're just regular reeds. A donkey brays in protest. Somewhere, a baby is doing its best to match the pitch. You try to keep your thoughts to yourself, but your brain is melting. Your feet ache. Your left ear is ringing from the guy with the bronze cymbals performing devotional rhythms by the ziggurat wall. The only moment of peace comes when you stop briefly by a fountain where someone has strung up charms to ward off evil noise demons. That's not even a joke. Some Sumerians believed in spirits that thrived on chaos and shouting, and they'd hang beads, feathers, or small clay plaques to discourage them. You whisper, "Take him instead," while passing the potter again. At the market, the volume is apocalyptic. The cries of fishmongers, spice sellers, basket weavers, and amateur fortune-tellers all compete like a deranged orchestra. Your father haggles over a clay pot while you stand there holding the grain sack, slowly becoming one with the dust cloud rising from the trampled ground. By the time you get back home, your ears are ringing. Not metaphorically, actually ringing. You sit on the floor and lean back against the wall. The potter sings again, distant now but still audible. "Maybe the gods cursed my hearing," you mutter. Your mother shrugs. "No, just your neighbours." You laugh. A little. Then a child screams and a goat leaps off a roof and crashes into a basket of dates. And you remember. You haven't even gotten to the dangerous part of the day yet. There's something suspicious about tonight's lentils. You eye the clay bowl in your lap, swirl its contents gently, and watch the lentils drift like reluctant survivors in a greasy broth. Your mother insists they're fine. Your stomach, still remembering yesterday's meal like a betrayal, has its doubts. You scoop a bite and chew cautiously. The texture is grainy. The flavour, muddy, with a whisper of something that might have once been a herb, or possibly just riverweed. You swallow and wait. So far, so good. You take another bite, still alive. Then you notice the smell. It's not from your bowl. It's the fish from 2 houses down, the ones drying on a rooftop rack. The wind has shifted just enough to deliver the scent straight through the door. Sour, yeasty, and tinged with that certain aroma that says, "I died for nothing." A stray dog under the window starts retching. You feel less alone. Food safety in Sumer isn't just inconsistent, it's mostly theoretical. Preservation methods include sun-drying, salting, when you can get it, or smoking food over open hearths, which makes everything taste like your house smells. And still, things spoil. Fast. Especially meat. Especially in this heat. You set the bowl down and whisper to no one in particular, "If I get sick again, I'm moving to Akkad." A few weeks ago, your cousin got violently ill after eating what she thought was pickled onion. Turns out it was just regular onion left forgotten in a sealed jar since the last lunar festival. She hallucinated a talking frog, screamed at the temple's brick floor, and spent 2 days wrapped in wet reeds chanting, "I am the river." She's fine now, mostly. Still flinches at frogs. Scholars remain divided on how common foodborne illness was in early Mesopotamian cities, but the symptoms described in ancient medical tablets, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, spiritual possession, suggest a strong connection between diet and disaster. Unfortunately, the go-to cure wasn't always effective. Eat more lentils and hope for divine mercy. You take another bite. Gutsy move. A bit later, your father returns from the canal bank, his tunic damp and mood sour. He announces that someone's dumped dye runoff upstream. Again. "Fish are purple now," he mutters, scratching his beard. "Maybe they're holy." No one laughs. Purple fish is bad news. It means cloth makers are poisoning the water again, and your next river bath might leave you stained like a festival garment. Speaking of baths, you're due for one. But you'd rather risk the flies than catch something worse from the murky water. A sponge bath with a damp cloth will have to do. You scrape some of the sticky film off your arms and wonder when your paws forgot how to breathe. Back to the lentils. They've gone cold. They smell worse now. You look at your mother, hoping she'll notice the shade of dread on your face. She doesn't. She's busy arguing with your uncle about whether the last priest who blessed the well cursed the beans by accident. You don't stir counterclockwise during a lunar eclipse, she says flatly. That's only if the moon god is facing west, your uncle replies. You chew your last bite as they bicker. Nobody in the room trusts the lentils, and yet somehow everyone's still eating them. Such is life. Hunger always wins the argument. Quirky tidbit. Some households believed in food spirits, small invisible beings who lived in jars and judged you for disrespecting meals. To appease them, families sometimes set aside a tiny portion of food near the hearth. You do so now, just in case. The spirit deserves better, but at least you're trying. Later that evening you lie down with your stomach gurgling ominously. It's too early to know if you've dodged the danger or just lit a fuse. The air is still, the moon rising behind thin clouds, casting a pale sheen on the rooftops. Then your sister groans, then she bolts upright and sprints outside. Uh-oh. You follow her, half concerned, half afraid she's headed for the communal latrine, which, as you now realise, is currently occupied by a family of rats. Probably. It's always rats. She makes it to the alley instead and bends over with a sound that makes you deeply grateful for the lack of moonlight. Your mother appears behind you, arms crossed. I told her not to eat the lentils. You blink. You made them. I didn't eat them, she says coolly. Fair point. The rest of the night is restless. Your sister returns, pale and shaking, and collapses beside the fire pit. You fetch her some water and a small cloth. You even hum a little, hoping the barley spirit song helps. It doesn't. She still looks green. Experts still debate whether Sumerians understood food poisoning as physical or spiritual affliction. Many medical tablets describe evil wind in the belly, often cured with a mix of crushed garlic, resin, and prayer. One particularly odd cure suggests wrapping the patient in goat hair and chanting to the god of digestion. You have neither goat hair nor the energy for chanting, you just hope she sleeps. Eventually the room grows quiet. The dog stops barking. The fish stink fades. You close your eyes and begin the countdown. 5, 4, 3. Your stomach gurgles. 2. Oh no. 1. You sit up fast. It's going to be a long night. The good news? You made it through the night. The bad news? You made it through the night. Your stomach feels like it wrestled a demon and lost. You didn't end up vomiting, but your intestines are sending ominous signals that you now interpret fluently. It's the ancient Sumerian way of saying, today will not be gentle. You sit up slowly, every muscle protesting. Your sister's still asleep by the fire pit, curled into herself like a wilted reed. She moans softly and pulls her mat tighter. You glance at the nearly empty water jug and do the mental math. Not enough to get through the morning. Time to fetch more. Again. But first, you notice something wrong. A soft sound, like scratching, above you. You glance upward toward the thatched ceiling, where dried reeds, wooden beams and mud plaster form a questionable barrier between your family and the sky. Something shifts. Something squeaks. Your eyes narrow. Rats. You rise slowly, step carefully toward the middle of the room, and watch a clump of dust fall from the ceiling. Then another. Then a soft pattering sound of little claws scrabbling across the beams. You're not surprised. You're just disappointed. Rats in the ceiling aren't unusual. They sneak in through holes in the outer walls or climb the stacked bricks. In a city where food scraps and unsecured storage abound, rats have a buffet lifestyle. They're not shy either. Sumerian rats are bold, adventurous. Some of them probably pay rent. You grab a stick and jab it at the reed roof. Silence. Then a soft scampering noise as something flees across the beam. Dust and what is definitely rat droppings rain down. You cough, wave it away, and mutter a prayer to whichever god oversees rodent eviction. Historical note. While direct evidence of pest control in ancient Sumer is limited, some archaeological layers suggest households used clay or bitumen to seal holes, and certain amulets were dedicated to banishing household vermin. Whether spiritual or practical, the struggle was clearly real. You return to your mat, only to hear something else. A creak. This time, it's not above you. It's outside. You freeze. Slowly, quietly, you move toward the doorway. You peek through the reed curtain. The alley is empty. Quiet. Maybe too quiet. You've lived in this neighbourhood long enough to know that goats don't stay silent unless they've been bribed, threatened or stolen. You hear the sound again, a faint scraping against wood. Your eyes scan the shadows near your door, and then you see it. A shape, moving low, quickly, then gone. Thieves! You hiss under your breath and yank open the curtain. Nothing. Just disturbed dust and a few chicken feathers floating in the morning light. Someone tried your door. Maybe testing it. Maybe scouting. In Sumerian towns, theft is a fact of life, especially during times of grain shortage or bad harvests. Locks are primitive at best. A heavy stone or a tied rope. You rush to reinforce the door with a wedge and a few jars stacked noisily in front. Your mother stirs and sits up. "What?" she asks groggily. "Someone tried to get in," you say. She sighs. "Probably Baisie's boys again. I told him that alley's too tempting." You both exchange glances. Later someone will mention it to the town guard, if he's sober, if he's not busy being bribed by the same people you're reporting. Quirky tidbit, some homes kept guard dogs, though most of them were more like overly dramatic pets than protectors. A few tablets describe disputes over stolen sheep, goats, and, hilariously, brooms. Apparently theft extended to anything not nailed down, and even then. You check your grain jars, nothing missing. The lentils are still here, staring at you like they know what they did. The door is secure, for now, and then, from the ceiling again. You blink and slowly realise the rats are back, but so are the pests below. Someone knocks on the side of your wall, a neighbour. Number you hear voices, men's voices, not from your street. You move toward the roof stairs, climb quietly and peer over the top. Down the alley, just outside your neighbourhood boundary, two strangers are poking around. Not from here, their tunics are better made. One carries a staff. The other has a bag slung over his back, too flat to be carrying anything good. They don't look like beggars. They don't look like priests. They look like trouble. You duck back down. Your brother joins you, yawning. "What's going on?" "Strangers," you whisper, "might be casing houses." He grunts and mutters something about hiding the fish sauce. You both sit, listening. In cities like internal threats are just as common as those from outside. Travellers, displaced farmers, angry merchants, all kinds pass through looking for opportunity, or whatever they can take without being chased. And night doesn't protect you. In fact, that's when it's easiest to lose everything. You sit tense for a long time, until the voices fade. The goat finally makes noise again, stomping on a reed basket. You relax, slightly. The sun rises a little higher. The city begins to shake itself awake. You hear the call of the temple horn echo faintly in the distance, bouncing off mud walls and over rooftops like a warning. It's morning again, and your roof has rats, your street has thieves, and your lentils may still be plotting revenge. Welcome to another safe, warm, gently collapsing day in Sumer. It's not even mid-morning, and you're already considering which of your neighbours you'd most willingly trade lives with. None are great options. On one side, there's the potter, who sings all day and burns half his wares. On the other, the textile dyer, whose house permanently reeks of fermented urine and crushed snails. Still, you think, maybe snail fumes are preferable to what you've got. Paper-thin walls and neighbours with no volume control. You sit by the doorway, trying to mend a torn reed mat, but the soundscape around you is like a concert for the overstimulated. Your brother's whining. The goats are screaming at the chickens, and from the next house over your neighbour and her cousin are arguing again, loudly and theatrically. "She stole my spindle! It was my spindle! She sang on my roof during temple prayers. It's not my fault you can't appreciate music." You look up at the ceiling, praying for a divine miracle, or at least selective deafness. Sumerian domestic walls were made from sun-dried mudbrick, cheap, effective, and about as soundproof as a soggy reed basket. Conversations, arguments, prayers, flatulence, all travel effortlessly from one house to another. Privacy doesn't exist, neither does peace and quiet. You hear a loud thump from above. The goat's back on the roof, again. You stand up, duck through the narrow doorway and step outside to check the damage. On the way, your neighbour, yes, the same one, spots you and waves you over. "I need help moving pots," she says sweetly, as if she wasn't just cursing someone's ancestors 5 minutes ago. You sigh and follow her. Her courtyard is packed with clay pots in various states of decay, probably part of her family's long-standing tradition of never throwing anything away. You help her lift a cracked storage jar filled with dried dates, grunting as the weight shifts and sloshes against your chest. "You're stronger than your brother," she mutters. You pretend not to hear. Here's a fun historical fact. Archaeologists have found evidence of close-knit communities in Sumerian cities. Literally. The houses often share walls, roofs, and sometimes even doorways. This tight design made for efficient building, but offered zero personal space. Your neighbour offers you a dried fig as thanks. You bite into it and immediately regret it. It's gritty, faintly fermented, and definitely harbours the soul of a dead bee. You swallow anyway. You've had worse. Back home, your brother is loudly complaining about something your mother said 2 days ago. Your father is muttering about how no one grinds barley properly anymore, and your aunt has started singing, off-key and too loudly, while sweeping the floor. The goat punctuates every note with a bleat of profound disapproval. You retreat to the far corner of the house. Maybe it's quieter there. It isn't. The city noise seeps in from every side. The potter drops a jug with a musical crack. Children shriek with laughter, or panic. You honestly can't tell. A dog barks and someone yells at it in a voice loud enough to wake the dead, which is saying something because the cemetery is just beyond the irrigation canal, and those people have probably learned to sleep through it. Quirky tidbit. Sumerians believed certain sounds could attract or repel spirits. That's why people sometimes chanted during chores, or clapped during ceremonies. One text warns that arguing too loudly during the full moon might summon a listening demon. You wonder if your neighbour has already summoned several. You grab the barley sack and head to the market, hoping the walk might give you some mental distance. It does, for about 5 minutes. Then someone's donkey sneezes directly on your foot, and a passing vendor drops a basket of onions beside you, with the delicate grace of a landslide. At the stall, you try to haggle for a few onions and maybe some garlic. The merchant's got a booming voice and a stubborn jawline. You match him tone for tone until you both realise you're just yelling at each other for sport. The people behind you in line seem entertained. The merchant shrugs and throws in an extra clove. Back home, your mother sniffs the garlic like she's judging its life choices. "Not bad," she mutters. You sit by the hearth again, attempting to patch the storage basket. From next door, more shouting erupts. "You took my fish sauce! I traded for it! With who? My goat!" You bury your face in your hands. Later, a priest walks down the street chanting softly, his voice cutting through the chaos like a gentle thread. He's reciting blessings for the lunar festival next week, urging people to donate offerings. You feel a little soothed. The noise quiets for a moment as neighbours bow their heads respectfully. Even the goat hushes. Then someone drops a pot. Clang! Everyone sighs. The spell breaks. You head up to the roof just to breathe. From here, the city looks peaceful, like it's holding its breath. In the distance, the ziggurat glows in the low sunlight, majestic and quiet. The illusion lasts 3 whole seconds. Then your neighbour starts singing again. You lie back on the warm clay and close your eyes, not to sleep, just to survive. Between the thin walls, loud neighbours, divine goats, and communal everything, the idea of solitude feels like a myth. Maybe in the next life, you'll be reincarnated as a temple brick. At least then you'll get some silence, probably. You're awakened, not by the rooster, not by a goat headbutting the door, not even by the potter's tone-deaf rendition of a harvest song. No, today, your alarm clock is a priest shouting at your window about moon-related misfortunes. You blink, squint, stare. There he is, wrapped in ceremonial robes the colour of wet ash, standing just outside your home with a clay tablet in one hand and a bundle of dried herbs in the other. His forehead is smeared with soot. His voice carries that performative urgency that lets you know something's about to be expensive. You poke your head out of the doorway and raise an eyebrow. "The moon god has turned his face," he says ominously. "Misfortune approaches. I sensed it in a goat's sneeze." You nod slowly because in Sumer this kind of logic holds water, especially holy water. Your mother joins you, arms folded. "What kind of misfortune?" she asks, suspicious. The priest squints dramatically at the sky. "A shadow on your household. You must cleanse your entryway and offer a sheaf of barley. Possibly 2. Also," he leans in, "has anyone in your house been dreaming of frogs?" You hesitate. "Why?" "No reason," he says quickly. "But if you have, that'll cost extra." You sigh and look at your mother. who is already rummaging through a jar of barley with the resigned air of someone who's paid for sillier things, like goat ointment or anti-lice chants that didn't work. Welcome to the spiritual maintenance cost of Sumerian life. The gods are everywhere, and their moods are your problem. You've got a deity for the sun, for rivers, for grain, for beer, for scribes, and at least one for doors. Yes, doorways have their own divine protector. If anything weird happens, a broken pot, a stubbed toe, unusually aggressive sheep, it could be a sign from above. Historical records show that people regularly consulted priests and diviners to interpret these signs. Dreams were especially important. If you dreamt of a flood, doom, of a lion, also doom, of being kissed by a stranger, you might be in love, or cursed. Possibly both. Quirky tidbit. In some temple schools, apprentice priests were trained to interpret dreams using pre-written lists of symbolic meanings, sort of like ancient Mesopotamian horoscopes, but with more snakes. The priest mutters a few more incantations and sprinkles what might be crushed onion onto the lintel. He chants something that sounds like, "May Nana find your walls symmetrical," then pockets the barley and leaves without another word. You go back inside, a little lighter in supplies but no more spiritually reassured. Your uncle, sitting near the hearth, mutters, "He's just trying to get a second lunch." Still, you can't help but wonder. Was the floor a little more wobbly this morning? Did the goat look at you wrong? You decide not to test fate. You head to the shrine in the corner of the room, a small soot-stained ledge with 2 carved figurines. One for Inanna, goddess of war and love, which is frankly a terrifying combo, and one for Enki, god of wisdom and water. You light a bit of incense made from dried herbs and mumble something about peace, bread that's fully cooked, and fewer rat encounters. Your little brother pokes you in the ribs. You forgot to ask for rain. You glare at him. If I ask for rain, the walls melt. True, mudbrick homes have a complicated relationship with weather. Rain can soften them, collapse corners, or wash away walls entirely. A heavy storm last year took out half your aunt's kitchen and a chicken coop. The chicken, however, is thriving. It lives on the ziggurat steps now and answers to no one. Later that afternoon, another priest arrives. This one smells like burnt resin and has a scroll under one arm. "Divine inspection," he announces. "Routine." You and your mother look at each other with synchronized irritation. He walks through your home with the solemn pace of someone pretending to notice spiritual imbalance in walls he barely glances at. He pauses, sniffs the hearth, and nods. The smoke spirit is content, he says, which is the religious equivalent of "looks fine to me." Your mother asks if this inspection will require a payment. The priest grins. "Only if you wish to ensure continued balance." She throws him a crust of barley bread. He accepts it without blinking and walks off, humming. Experts still debate how deeply religious belief affected day-to-day decisions for Sumerian households. Some argue it was ritualistic habit, more routine than devotion, while others believe fear of divine wrath was a real, daily motivator. Either way, ignoring the gods wasn't wise, nor was ignoring the priests, who were the gods' customer service line. As night falls, you help prepare the evening meal. More lentils because the gods clearly haven't blessed your diet lately. You notice your sister avoiding the stew, likely still traumatized. She eats dry barley instead and mutters about frogs in her sleep. You glance at the little shrine again and offer a whispered bonus prayer. No frogs. Please, just no frogs. Outside, temple bells ring in the distance. The moon rises low and glowing. Somewhere down the road, someone's wailing. Either a prayer or a very dramatic love song. Possibly both. It's hard to tell. You lie back on your mat and stare at the ceiling. It creaks faintly. The goat mercifully is asleep. You think about the moon, god Nana, glowing above, judging your lintel decorations and barley donations like a divine landlord. Hope he's in a good mood, you mumble. Your brother snores softly. Your mother whispers a blessing. And you? You try to sleep, with one eye open for frogs. The morning greets you with a rumble. Not from the sky. There's no storm, no thunderclouds rolling over the ziggurat. But from your walls. You sit up slowly. The house creaks. The corner by the storage jar crumbles ever so slightly. A tiny puff of dust drifting into the air like a sigh. You know that sound. Everyone in Sumer knows that sound. Rain is coming. You dash outside, barefoot, scanning the sky. There it is. A thick, grey smear on the eastern horizon, low and crawling, announcing its approach without apology. You glance down the alley and see other neighbours reacting the same way, tying up bundles of reeds, shouting at their goats, slapping extra mud onto their roofs in frantic smears. It's a citywide reflex. Rain in Sumer isn't gentle. It's not romantic. It doesn't bring cool relief or poetic inspiration. It brings mudslides, mildew, and wall collapse. Your house is made of the same thing falling from the sky, water and earth. Too much of either, and the walls you just spent days patching up could slough off like wet cake. Inside, your mother is already yelling orders. You and your brother begin moving everything away from the leak-prone side of the room. The reed mat gets rolled. The grain sack goes on a crate. The goat, because of course the goat's indoors again, gets dragged out by its tether, bleating indignantly. Historical records describe entire neighbourhoods in ancient Mesopotamian cities suffering partial collapses during rainy seasons. In response, people built thicker walls, added overhangs, and used tar-like bitumen to seal cracks. You have none of those luxuries right now, just panicked scooping and a prayer that the rain's lazy enough to miss your house today. You grab a paddle and start smearing wet mud, ironically, onto a patch that's already softening. It's like repairing a sandcastle with more sand, but you do it anyway, because not doing it means spending the night with a pile of soggy bricks as your new mattress. Your sister tries to help by propping up a woven mat against a leak spot. It immediately falls over. She shrugs and says, "It wanted to die." Quirky tidbit. Sumerians didn't just fear the structural threat of rain, they personified it. Some believed floods and downpours were expressions of divine rage. Epic tales like the Eridu Genesis even describe gods wiping out cities with water to punish human arrogance. You can't help but wonder if you forgot an offering, or if the moon god's still grumpy. The first droplets hit. Soft, quick. The kind of droplets that tease you before the real downpour begins. Then, splat. A loud one, then 5 more. Then it's like someone dumped a vat of water from the top of the ziggurat. Rain lashes the roof. Water trickles through weak patches and starts dripping onto the floor, right onto the sleeping mat. You lunge and shove it aside, slipping slightly as the muddy floor sucks at your feet, like it's welcoming you into the underworld. Your uncle starts muttering an old chant for house protection. It doesn't work. The back corner caves slightly. Nothing major, just a few bricks and a lot of your hope. You all sit close together, pressed into the driest corner you can find. The goat tries to climb into your lap. No one is happy. You try to pass the time by tightening the reed rope that holds the cooking pot. A small stream of water runs down the centre of the wall. You trace it with your finger, half hypnotised. It's kind of pretty, if you ignore the slow erosion of your domestic life. Your brother, who's always been weirdly optimistic, whispers, "At least the dust is gone." You resist the urge to throw the goat at him. Outside, the street is a soup of footprints and slime. Children squeal with glee as they jump in puddles while their parents scream about ruined sandals. A cart tips sideways in the mud, and its owner sits down beside it, defeated. Inside, you attempt to salvage your family's little shrine. The wooden figurine of Inanna has already toppled. Enki's face is sliding off the clay plaque. You prop them both up, muttering, "You guys better be listening." Experts still debate how ordinary citizens handled annual rains. While elite temples had well-sealed storerooms and drainage systems, regular folks often had to rebuild sections of their homes every single year. Mudbrick was cheap to make, but never permanent. It was the Sumerian version of seasonal depression, but with more hauling and less therapy. Your mother finally declares the worst has passed. The rain slows, the light shifts. The house no longer sounds like it's weeping from every corner, but the floor is a squishy sponge. You look down at your toes, submerged in a thin layer of cloudy water, and sigh. It's time for triage. Everyone fans out to assess the damage. A jar of lentils has been soaked, some clay pots cracked in the damp, the goat has pooped in the cooking corner again, and your sister's blaming it on rain demons. You begin scooping water toward the door using half a broken bowl. It's slow, tedious work, but you don't stop, because standing still in a Sumerian house after a rainstorm means sinking. By sundown, the house smells like mildew, wet dog, and panic sweat, but the roof hasn't caved completely. That's a win. You eat dry bread and some pickled onion in silence, chewing slowly, carefully, like you're afraid of what else might be in there. Your mother lights a few incense reeds to combat the damp stench. It kind of helps. Mostly it smells like burning soggy socks. Later that night, you curl into a corner that's only half damp and rest your head on a rolled cloth. The sound of dripping water continues in rhythm, an uneven lullaby. You stare at the ceiling and whisper to yourself, "Next house, I'm building it out of stone." But you won't. You'll do this all again next year. Because this is what life is like in a mud-brick house. Beautiful in theory, catastrophic in practice, and forever at war with the sky. You wake up coughing. The smell hits you first. Damp earth, singed straw, and something sharp and sour like burned vinegar. You roll to your side and gag softly as the stench clings to the back of your throat. Your sister is already sitting upright, eyes watery, hair plastered to her face. The fire pit smoulders in the centre of the room, sending lazy curls of smoke into the stagnant air. No draught, no breeze, just smoke building and swirling like a vengeful spirit. You stumble to your feet and tug at the reed curtain over the doorway. It flutters limply, barely inviting the outside world in. The rain may have stopped, but its aftermath still saturates everything. The roof, the walls, even your lungs. A puddle near the hearth burps softly as you step around it. Your mother is hunched in the corner, attempting to re-dry the grain basket. The barley is damp. The flour is now paste. The house has transformed into a humid oven of spoiled food and broken clay. She doesn't look up when she says, "You better not owe anyone." You blink. Why would I owe someone? She shifts her gaze toward the storage jars, less than half full. Because if we fall behind on the barley tithe this cycle, we're one step from sweeping the temple at midnight. Ah, there it is. In Sumer, debt isn't just a problem, it's a trap, a miscalculated barter, a sick goat, a failed crop. Any one of these can spiral into a chain of obligation that lands you scrubbing ziggurat steps or hauling bricks until your bones forget how to rest. If you fall behind, you don't lose possessions, you lose your freedom. Your father returns from the market with a grim expression. He carries a clay tablet tucked under his arm, your family's current tally with the local granary. He doesn't need to speak. The look says it all. "We're short," he mutters finally, "and the priest clerk came by asking questions." Your mother doesn't blink. What kind of questions? "The kind with sandals that don't have holes," he says. That means official questions, ones that might end in your barley being confiscated. Or worse, you being borrowed by the temple for services. Scholars have translated dozens of tablets documenting personal debt in Sumerian city-states. Some were as simple as a few measures of barley owed, others involved complex arrangements of repayment, labour or service to temples. And if you couldn't pay with crops, you paid with time, your child's time, your life. You glance at your little brother, currently stacking bricks outside in the sun, shirtless and singing softly to himself. He's 6. That's old enough to work, or to be traded for grain credit if things get desperate. A fringe case once recorded a man who pawned his nephew to a merchant in exchange for 2 sheep and a jug of oil. The boy didn't return home for 4 years. You shiver and grab the broken-handled basket. "I'll go gather reeds," you say. The canal is a mess. The water's higher than usual and murky. You pass another kid doing the same thing, gathering bundles of papyrus and muttering under his breath. Probably cursing the rain, the barley, and the gods in that order. On the way back, you see a group of older men hauling bricks under the temple's shadow. Their tunics are stained dark with sweat and river muck. One is your neighbour's uncle. The other is someone new, young, barefoot. His hands are rope burned. You ask what happened. "Debt," the older man says. You carry your reeds home with extra urgency. You don't want to haul bricks. You've seen what it does to people. Their backs twisted like old trees, their fingers permanently curled from gripping ropes. Back home, your father is smoothing a fresh clay tablet with a stick. He mutters the words aloud as he writes. 2 measures barley, 1 Labor Day, partial forgiveness if... Your mother interrupts. "We should just offer the goat." You gasp. The goat bleats. Your sister whispers, "Not Gary." Gary the goat has been with the family for 3 years. He's loud, moody, mildly violent, but his milk has saved you more times than you can count. You can't imagine temple life would suit him. Then again, maybe they'd promote him to priest. "No," your father says. "He's got a better future than we do." You half laugh, half choke on another puff of smoke. The irony is cruel but accurate. Quirky detail. Some Sumerian temples were legally allowed to absorb debtors into their labour force, a practice seen as both punishment and salvation. You wouldn't starve in temple service, but you wouldn't be free either. Your family might receive food rations in exchange for your work, but you'd sleep on reed mats under supervision, scrub altars, grind grain, haul stones, and never see the sun unless it was from the top of a scaffold. Later that evening your father returns from the granary. His tunic is muddied and his shoulders sag. "We have until the new moon," he says quietly. "Then they'll take someone." No one speaks. The hearth fire crackles. The water jug is nearly empty. Gary bleats as if on cue. The rain has stopped, but the real storm is just starting. You sit with your knees pulled to your chest and whisper to yourself, not to the gods this time, not to the ancestors, to the debt itself. Not me. Please, not me. But debt doesn't listen. The rash started 2 days ago. Just a small, itchy patch behind your knee. No big deal. Probably a bug bite or heat, or your tunic rebelling against its own existence. But today? Today, it's everywhere. You scratch your neck absent-mindedly as you wake, then your arms, then the underside of your chin. You pull back your sleeve to reveal a trail of angry red welts climbing up your forearm like an amateur map of the Euphrates. It burns, it itches, it whispers threats you're too tired to translate. You shuffle into the sunlight and wince. The air's thick with dust and the stench of boiled onions. The potter next door is already working, hammering clay with the rhythmic enthusiasm of a man who's never had a rash in his life. You head straight for the family's herbal pouch, the little clay container your aunt insists is full of medicinal wonder. You dig through the contents, dried garlic skins, 3 questionable leaves, and something that might once have been a lizard tail. Great. You're doomed. Your mother peers over your shoulder, takes one look at your skin, and announces with practiced calm, "That's definitely spirit poisoning." You blink. It's what now? Spirits. In your blood. Angry ones. Maybe frogs. Maybe not. Can't it just be a rash? She shakes her head and leaves the room. And just like that, you've been diagnosed. Medical knowledge in ancient Sumer is a curious blend of observation, guesswork, and divine blame. Real symptoms are recorded. Swelling, redness, fevers. But the cause is almost always supernatural. Cursed dreams, offended deities, angry winds. You could sneeze 3 times in a row and someone would start organising a goat sacrifice. You try to ignore the burning sensation and continue with your chores. Halfway through grinding barley, your arm flares up again, and you hiss through your teeth. The rash is spreading fast now, tiny red bumps crawling across your side. You imagine the priest shaking his head gravely, whispering about moon curses and river demons. You'd laugh, but it hurts to move. Later that morning, your aunt shows up with a cure. You prepare yourself. She holds up a small cloth bundle, unwraps it, and reveals her masterpiece, a dead mole, dried, flattened, slightly fragrant in the way all regrettable things are. You try to step back. She steps forward. "This will help," she says, completely confident. You say nothing. You've learned there's no winning this battle. She ties it with a piece of reed cord and drapes it around your neck like a medal of disgrace. It swings gently as you move, knocking against your chest with the weight of ancient disappointment. Quirky tidbit. Some Sumerian healing practices involve tying objects associated with the disease's spiritual source to the afflicted person. Dead animals, shards of pottery, cursed soil, or even bits of old sandals were thought to distract or confuse the spirit long enough for it to leave your body. You now smell like a dead mole, barley dust, and fear. The priest passes by and does a double take. He doesn't say anything, just squints at the mole, nods slightly, and continues on his way. You're not sure if that's a good sign. Scholars remain divided on how effective ancient Sumerian medicine really was. Some tablets describe plant-based remedies that may have had genuine antibacterial properties. Others suggest ritual incantations, smearing river clay, or whispering into oil. The line between treatment and performance was very, very thin. By late afternoon, the rash has spread to your legs. You hobble to the shade and collapse next to a water jar. Your sister offers you a spoonful of honey. "For luck," she says. You eat it. It doesn't help, but at least it's sweet. You overhear your uncle recommending a temple healer. "She knows frog rashes," he says, as if that's a standard medical specialty. Your mother agrees. You groan. The temple healer lives 2 alleys away near the ziggurat. Her doorway is marked with chalk symbols and her walls are covered in faded charms. She sits on a woven mat, grinding herbs and humming. You step inside, mole necklace swaying, and she smiles like she's seen this 100 times. She inspects your rash, nods, mumbles something about wind entering through the feet. She mixes a paste of crushed garlic, reeds and beer sediment, then slaps it directly onto your arm without warning. It stings. You shout. She grins. There. Now the demon knows who's boss. You thank her, not entirely sure what for, and leave with your skin tingling like you've been slapped by a beer-soaked onion. That night, the itching lessens slightly, or maybe you're just too exhausted to notice. The mole has gone from nuisance to companion. You name it Molak, and promise to bury it with honour if you survive. The family sits quietly as the stars come out. No one mentions your condition. Your mother hums softly. Your brother pokes at the hearth. You lie still, eyes half closed, and think about the spirits crawling in your blood, dancing in circles, throwing tiny parties. You whisper to them, "Okay, you win. Just stop." But they don't. Not yet. You wake up to shouting. It's not household shouting. No one's blaming anyone for burnt lentils or stolen sandals this time. No, this is official, deep-voiced shouting. The kind that echoes down alleyways and rolls across rooftops like a thunderclap of authority. You crawl to the doorway, half asleep and still vaguely itchy. Outside, a man in a linen kilt is yelling instructions, flanked by 2 others holding wooden staffs. All 3 wear polished copper pendants, temple-issued, and they're pointing at your house. You're fully awake now. Your father steps outside to greet them, already looking 10 years older than when he went to bed. You hover behind him. One of the men consults a clay tablet and announces, "Your household is assigned to temple duty this cycle. Begin immediately." There's no discussion, no appeals, just a date, a name, and a list. You're going to the ziggurat. Specifically, you're going to help haul bricks. You've known this day might come. It's the unspoken consequence of the barley tally running low, of missed offerings, of debts left to simmer. But knowing it doesn't make it easier to swallow. You nod slowly, already feeling the weight in your back. Your mother doesn't even argue. She simply hands you a reed head wrap and a flask of stale-date beer. "Don't drop anything important," she mutters, "or yourself." The sun is already high as you follow the supervisors up the dusty path toward the towering steps of the ziggurat. It looms above the city like a god carved into the landscape, layer upon layer of mudbrick geometry stacked into the clouds. The top vanishes in the glare. Scholars agree these massive step temples were centers of worship, administration and physical labor, constructed over decades, maintained constantly, and always demanding human effort. That means you. You reach the base and are handed a wooden sled, slick with grease and sweat, already stacked with freshly molded bricks. A priest shouts directions. You squint up the slope, heart sinking. You're hauling it up there. Mudbrick might sound light, but stack it, bake it, then soak it in ritual oil, and suddenly each one feels like a minor punishment from the god Enlil himself. You press your shoulder into the rope, bend your knees, and push. The sled jerks. Your sandals slide on the worn slope. Dust fills your mouth instantly. The sun stares down like it's mad at you personally. A man next to you curses in Sumerian, then in something that's probably just made up syllables of rage. Halfway up, you pause for breath. Your arms tremble, your hands burn. You look behind you. Another team's sled is catching up. The priest overseeing this section taps his staff on the stone. "Faster," he says, without looking up from his tablet. Quirky tidbit. Certain temple inscriptions record the names of labourers, though often only if they performed exceptional feats or caused problems. There's a tablet in that praises Ishtu Ilum, who did not drop a single brick in 5 moons. You wonder how many bricks you'll drop today. By the time you reach the halfway platform, your tunic is soaked. A young boy brings water in a cracked bowl. You drink greedily, not caring that it smells slightly of fish. The priest yells again, breaks over. The second climb is worse, narrower, hotter. Your legs feel like dried reeds. A brick shifts off the sled and smashes against the slope with a hollow thud. You freeze, awaiting divine wrath. The priest sighs. "Put it back," he mutters. You do. Slowly. Finally, you reach the platform near the top. The bricks are taken by another team and passed toward the summit like offerings to the gods. You collapse against a pillar. Your knees stop working. You wonder if you've died. A woman nearby is whispering a prayer as she scrubs ceremonial oil from a set of floor tiles. Another boy is arranging incense jars along the edges of a sacred platform. You realise this entire upper area smells not of sweat, but of resin and burnt cedar. It's strangely clean, calm, like a different world. You're too tired to resent it. Experts still debate whether ziggurat workers were all conscripted labourers, or if some volunteered for religious merit. Some temples even offered small payments, bread, oil, beer, to regular workers. But for you, this is a debt shift, not a devotion. You think of Gary the goat, who's back home chewing through someone's laundry line. You envy him. Later, you descend slowly. No sled this time, just shaky legs and a new sunburn. One of the priests tosses you a barley cake. It's dry, hard, and incredibly welcome. You eat it in silence, watching the temple cast its long shadow over the town. When you return home, your mother nods wordlessly. Your brother blinks at your appearance. You're covered in dust, your back is bent, and you smell like labour and crushed dreams. "Did you make it to the top?" he asks. You nod. "I think I saw the moon god's sandals," he whistles softly. "Were they nice?" "Very clean," you say. You lie on your mat that night, unable to sleep. Every muscle twitches. Your palms are raw. You close your eyes and still see bricks. In Sumer, debt doesn't always take your name. Sometimes it just borrows your body for the day. And tomorrow, you're told you'll be back at the ziggurat. Again. You're not sure if it's a celebration or a test of human endurance disguised as romance, but either way, you're getting married. The day starts the same as any other, with your family arguing over who used the last clean reed mat and a goat urinating in the doorway. But there's an added tension in the air today, an undercurrent of ceremony wrapped in onion-scented anticipation. Your mother's bustling. Your aunt's humming what might be a wedding chant, or possibly a threat to your cousin if she touches the date syrup again. You've been promised. That's the polite word. The accurate one is bargained. Dowry arrangements were made weeks ago. Some barley, 2 clay pots, and a length of dyed wool your grandmother insists is worth more than you. You're not sure how you feel. You've seen marriages in Sumer. Some end with shared figs and warm laughter, others with a shouted divorce declaration in the middle of the street. But today, none of that matters, because today your home is full of guests, goats, garlic, and so many children that you can't tell who belongs to whom anymore. Sumerian weddings weren't religious ceremonies as much as they were contractual exchanges, sealed by family, witnessed by neighbours, and recorded by a scribe if you were lucky or rich. No white dress, no rings, just a verbal agreement, a signed tablet, and a whole lot of loud opinions. You sit awkwardly in the centre of the room while your mother tries to tame your hair with wet hands and a shard of polished bronze as a mirror. "You look nice," she lies, as she pins a string of beads to your shoulder. You do your best not to sweat through your tunic. Meanwhile, your soon-to-be spouse is in the neighbouring courtyard, getting lectured by 3 uncles and looking like he might bolt. You can't blame him. The food's not ready, the incense keeps going out, and the family goat, Gary, is chewing the corner of your dowry cloth. Again. A small boy comes running in with a message. "The fish isn't cooked yet." "Then sing to it," your aunt shouts back. Here's a quirky detail. Marriage contracts in Sumer often included precise terms. Not just dowry items, but what happens if the husband leaves, if the wife fails to produce children, or if someone breaks a pot with malice. Your cousin's contract famously included the line, "If she does not brew beer properly, she may be returned." Romantic. Finally the food is laid out. Flatbread, lentil stew, dried figs, something that might be lamb but could just as easily be very old goat. There's date beer, served in wide ceramic bowls and slurped communally with reeds. You take a sip and immediately choke on the bitterness. The guests cheer. You're not sure if it's for you or the beer. The ceremony itself is short. Your father mumbles a blessing, the scribe reads from a tablet in the most monotone voice imaginable, and someone throws flower petals that immediately stick to the sweat on your arms. You nod. He nods. There's awkward clapping. You're married. No kiss. No music. Just the pressing realization that your new husband's hands are shaking slightly, and he smells like onions and nerves. The celebration begins in earnest. Children screech and run between legs. Old women trade stories. Someone throws up quietly behind a storage jar. It's a party. A very Sumerian party. Outside, the sun starts to set. casting a warm glow over the mud brick walls and the small courtyard where guests sit on mats, munching grain cakes and shouting over one another. The goat gets loose, again, and is corralled by a child wielding a clay ladle like a sword. You and your husband sit together near the fire pit, saying nothing for a while. There's no pressure to be affectionate. This isn't a love story, not yet. Just two people bound by family expectations, barley negotiations, and the shared trauma of surviving the cooking process. He finally speaks. "I saved a good fig for you." You blink. That's the most romantic thing anyone said to you all year. You accept the figure. It's only slightly smashed. Experts remain divided on how affectionate Sumerian marriages were. Some letters and poems suggest tenderness and even love, while others frame marriage as more practical, a way to form alliances, share labour, and continue lineages. Emotional closeness might develop, or it might not. It wasn't the priority. As the night grows darker, the guests begin to filter out, their laughter echoing down the alleys. A neighbour gets into a loud debate with your aunt over whether it was lamb or really well-cooked goat. No one wins. Your mother gathers the leftover bread. Your brother drinks too much date beer and falls asleep face down in the lentils. Your cousin accidentally sets part of her veil on fire. You and your husband retire to the back corner of the house, now awkwardly cleared of pots and sleeping siblings. You sit side by side on a woven mat that still smells faintly of millet and wet clay. "Do you snore?" he asks softly. "Like a drowning priest," you reply. He chuckles. "Good. I won't feel bad about mine." The fire dims. The house settles. Somewhere outside, a rooster crows too early. A dog barks at the moon. And you, newly married, stare up at the reed ceiling and wonder what happens tomorrow. Whatever it is, at least now there are two of you to endure it. You're not sure when your child stopped being a child. One day, they were just toddling through goat dung and chewing on barley like a confused squirrel. And now they're gone before sunrise, wrangling goats and shouting at stubborn sheep like a miniature adult with sunburned feet and a bad attitude. They're 6, barely taller than a grain jar. And yet, they have a job. This morning, you wake to find the house unusually quiet. Your spouse is still snoring gently, curled like a comma beneath the linen cover. You sit up and glance toward the hearth. No child. You poke your head outside and there they are. Your kid, barefoot and focused, guiding a trio of goats down the alley with a stick twice their height and twice their confidence. One goat headbutts a storage pot. Your child headbutts it back. You smile. A little. In Sumer, children didn't have childhoods in the way modern minds like to imagine them. There were no toys, not in the plastic, brightly coloured sense. No nap schedules, no play dates. There was work. As soon as you could walk, you could carry. As soon as you could talk, you could shout at livestock. Experts agree that Sumerian children, especially in rural or working-class homes, were assimilated into labour roles early. Herding, fetching water, grinding grain, weaving reeds, scaring birds from crops. There was always something to be done. And if your family had a debt to pay, you might be the payment. You watch your kid shoo the goats toward the open plain outside the city wall. The sun hasn't fully risen, but it's already warm. Your child moves with purpose, determination, mud on the knees, scratches down the shins. They belong to the world now. You step back inside and begin preparing breakfast. Crushed dates, flatbread, and lentils that are definitely trying to ferment. You save a fig for your child, a small one, mostly intact. By mid-morning, they return, sweaty and beaming. "No wolves," they declare proudly, holding up a stick that looks like it's been through battle. "Only a chicken, a mean one." You don't ask what happened to the chicken. You hand them water, and they gulp it down with the enthusiasm of someone who's survived something unspeakable. Then they plop down onto the mat and begin scratching a picture into the dirt floor with their finger. A goat, a stick, a smiling sun. It's the most childish thing you've seen them do in weeks. You remember being their age, vaguely. You were already carrying bricks, already waking to the sound of barley being measured and temple bells demanding labour. You were already helping your mother smear dung against the wall, already hearing words like dowry and tithe whispered like weather forecasts. Quirky tidbit. Some Sumerian families did, in fact, enroll their children in temple schools, adubas, if they were particularly clever, or if the family had ambitions. These children learned to read, write cuneiform, recite hymns, and manage records. But school wasn't a right. It was a gamble. And for most, work trumped words. Later in the day, your child is tasked with watching the house while you fetch reeds. They sit proudly by the doorway, armed with the same stick from goat duty. When you return, you find them glaring suspiciously at a neighbour who got a little too close to the grain jar. What if someone steals something, they ask, eyes wide. You ruffle their hair. Then we say it was cursed and let them have it. They grin. Evening falls, and your child insists on helping cook. They drop a date into the lentils and announce it's fancy now. You don't have the heart to argue. It's already the best part of the stew. After dinner, they start to doze before the fire's even out. One arm draped over a reed basket, the other still holding the goat stick like a sceptre. Your spouse looks at them and sighs. Too fast. You nod. Too small for all this. But no one in Sumer waits until they're ready. Readiness is a luxury. Here, survival is the curriculum, and growing up isn't a phase. It's an acceleration. You lift your child gently, lay them on the mat and cover them with a thin cloth. They mumble something about goats. You kiss their forehead and settle beside them, eyes already heavy. You hope they dream of flying, or figs, or rain that doesn't destroy walls. But tomorrow they'll be back in the field. Because in Sumer, even children carry the weight of the world. Sometimes on their backs, sometimes in a bucket, sometimes while chasing a chicken, with a vengeance you can't quite explain. You wake to drumming. Not thunder, not war, worse. Festival. The sound echoes from the direction of the temple plaza, a steady beat that starts in your chest and ends somewhere behind your eyes. You groan and pull the reed mat over your head, but it's no use. The rhythm is infectious, relentless. Boom, boom, boom. Even the goats seem annoyed. Your spouse sits up slowly. Is it that time again? You nod. The gods want a party. And when the gods want a party, you give them one, whether you feel like celebrating or not. This festival, you remember, is for Inanna, goddess of love, war, and absolutely no boundaries, which means loud music, copious drink, public dancing, and about 12 varieties of regrettable choices. Your uncle calls it a spiritual headache. Your neighbour calls it an excuse to sing without judgment. The entire neighbourhood is already transforming. Reed mats are being strung between rooftops for shade. Old women are baking enormous flatbreads in communal ovens. Children are painting their faces with coloured clay and chasing one another with sticks, more so than usual. And you've been volunteered to help carry offerings. You haul a bundle of barley to the plaza, dodging dancers, carts, goats, and at least one merchant trying to sell divinely anointed fish. The plaza is buzzing. Hundreds of people, bright fabrics, music from flutes and lyres, a very enthusiastic drummer who looks like he hasn't blinked in an hour. Scholars believe these week-long festivals served multiple purposes: worship, community bonding, economic exchange, and maybe, just maybe, collective exhaustion. Records show entire cities shutting down to participate, which sounds festive until you realise it means no rest, no quiet, and no escape. Your task is simple. Pile offerings at the base of Inanna's shrine: grain, dates, honey, small clay idols, and the occasional unlucky chicken. The priestesses chant prayers, swaying slowly. One of them locks eyes with you, nods, and paints a line of blue clay across your forehead. "For favour," she whispers. You try to smile. Your head itches immediately. Back at home, your spouse is attempting to celebrate by preparing extra beer. It's stronger than usual, thick and slightly green. You sip it, cough, and immediately feel the tips of your ears go numb. "Festival batch," they say proudly. You make a mental note to drink water before anything else. By midday, the drums are louder, the dancing faster, and the guests sweatier. Children weave between legs, throwing petals and shouting songs that barely rhyme. A man climbs onto a jar and begins reciting a poem about being rejected by the moon. Everyone claps. He bows. The jar cracks, and still, the music continues. Here's a fun festival fact. During Inanna's rites, there were ritual impersonations where priests dressed as divine lovers, warriors, or celestial animals. One year, a man spent the entire festival pretending to be a sacred goose. He hissed at anyone who got too close. Legend says he bit the high priest and lived. You're summoned again, this time to help set up the love tent. You raise an eyebrow. "Don't ask," the priest says. "You help anyway." It's made of dyed linens and smells suspiciously of jasmine and regret. You tie the corners, duck out quickly, and tell yourself it's above your pay grade. Later that night, your family gathers for the feast. Roasted onions, fried barley cakes, dried figs, and something new. Honeyed locusts. You chew one. Crunchy. Sweet. Disturbingly enjoyable. Your child is beside themselves with joy. They've painted their arms with tiny suns, made a crown of reeds, and are currently chasing a clay duck through a puddle. "I'm Inanna's eagle," they declare. You let them have this moment. As the sun sets, fires are lit across the rooftops. People sing hymns to the gods, their voices blending into the night like a warm, chaotic lullaby. Drums continue, now joined by the hollow thump of hand-carved gourds. The plaza glows with torchlight. You see dancers silhouetted against the flame, their shadows stretching tall and strange. But it's not all joy. One of your neighbours collapses near the water jar, too much beer, not enough rest. Another man slurs a love confession to a priestess who gently redirects him toward the fig vendor. The night gets messier, louder, more divine. You sit on the rooftop, sipping weak beer, feet dangling off the edge, watching the city pulse and sway. Your spouse joins you, exhausted. "Did you see the goat in a headdress?" they ask. "Was it Gary?" "I don't know, but he looked smug." You laugh. A little, then sigh. "How many more days?" "5, they groan. You lie back on the warm clay roof, listening to the drums, the laughter, the faraway screech of someone attempting to summon a moon spirit through interpretive dance. It's all too much, too loud, too bright. But also, kind of wonderful. In Sumer, the gods demand your body during labour, your barley during taxes, and your sanity during festivals. You give them what you can, sometimes willingly, sometimes tipsy. Your eyes close slowly. The music fades to a background hum. Tomorrow, you'll have to work. Rebuild the reed fence, clean the oil spill, rescue Gary, again. But for now, you let the celebration wash over you, and hope it ends before your liver gives out. The sky is bruised and low. Thick grey clouds press down on the rooftops like the gods themselves are leaning over to get a better look at the mess. You're up early again, not because of duty or drums or goats this time, but because the roof is leaking. You knew it was coming. The storm a few nights ago soaked everything. The grain stores, the reed mats, even the shrine in the corner. You patched what you could, slapped on more mud, muttered to Enki, and hoped. But hope, as it turns out, doesn't hold a wall together. This morning, a corner of the ceiling gives way with a soft, wet thump. A slurry of rain-soaked plaster, straw, and half a beetle lands in your cooking pot. You stare at it for a full 5 seconds before muttering, "Of course." The rest of the house doesn't fare much better. One wall is cracking. The floor feels soft underfoot. The smell, that damp, fungal, lived-in scent, clings to everything. You peel back the mat and find mould blooming like a bad omen across the corner where your child usually sleeps. You sigh deeply and begin scooping soggy clay with your bare hands. Sumerian homes, built of sun-dried mudbrick, were brilliant innovations for their time. Cheap, abundant, naturally insulating, but also fragile. One good rain, and maybe some bad luck, and your house forgets it's a house. Your spouse joins you, expression grim but not surprised. "Should have patched the roof last week." "I was busy hauling bricks for the ziggurat," you grumble. "I said should have, not could have." Your child sneezes. From beneath a basket. They crawl out, blinking at the chaos, and ask if the house is dying. You say no. You don't sound convincing. The rest of the day is spent trying to rescue what's salvageable. You carry your mat outside to dry, only for it to collapse into sludge. You flip a storage jar and find a family of beetles nesting under it. You don't even flinch anymore. You nod at them. They scatter. The shrine has water damage. The statue of Inanna is missing part of her face, and the moon god's tablet is now curved like a banana. You wipe them down gently and place them on a dry reed, offering an apology and a bit of stale bread. You figure they've seen worse. You're not alone in your suffering. Across the alley, neighbours are dragging half-melted bricks out of their courtyards. One woman is yelling at her husband because the roof fell on their lentil jar. The man yells back that the lentils were cursed anyway. You agree with both. A priest wanders by and declares the storm was a sign of renewal. You consider throwing a mud ball at him. Quirky detail. Some Sumerians believed that house collapses were divine messages, the gods destroy to make way for the new. There's even a ritual where families would abandon homes entirely after a disaster, letting weeds take over before starting fresh somewhere else. You don't have that option. You have a bucket, a cracked spine, and 3 bricks that haven't turned back into soup. You get to work. By mid-afternoon, you and your spouse are mixing new mud. Your hands are blistered, your patience thinner than a fish broth on tax week, and the goat, yes, Gary, is chewing on one of the drying bricks. Your child points at the half-destroyed wall. Are we going to fix it? You nod. Not because it's easy, because we're too tired to move. They nod solemnly, pick up a chunk of plaster and begin patting it into the base with both hands. It immediately falls off. They try again. Your spouse chuckles. Maybe they'll build houses better than we did. Maybe they'll build them somewhere dry, you say. You all pause, then laugh. The bitter, joyful, exhausted kind of laugh that comes at the end of a day that tried its best to break you and didn't quite succeed. By evening, the house still looks like a crime scene, but it's yours. The hearth smokes again. The mats are damp but usable. A few bricks have been reshaped and rest against the wall like sleeping soldiers. The shrine is lopsided, but the gods haven't smited you yet. Dinner is quiet. Barley stew, slightly sour from the rain, with hard bread and a fig that probably fell off someone else's tree. No one complains. You eat every bite. As the moon rises, you lie on your mat, staring at the patched ceiling. The hole is gone, for now. The dripping has slowed. The breeze through the cracks almost feels nice. Your child is already asleep, curled up beside Gary. Your spouse breathes softly beside you. The city of groans and settles, its rooftops steaming faintly in the moonlight, as though the whole place is sighing with relief. You close your eyes. Tomorrow more bricks, more heat, more shouting, more grinding, hauling, patching, praying. But for now, your house is still standing. Barely, gloriously, somehow. The night deepens. The sounds of the city fade. The chants, the drums, the bickering neighbours, all replaced by a softer rhythm. The crackle of cooling bricks, the whisper of wind through reed curtains, the slow, steady breath of sleep. You lie still, heavy in body, but somehow light in spirit. The aches remain, of course, the sore shoulders, the bruised hands, the sunburn that never quite fades. But they've quieted for now, content to rest with you in the hush of midnight. The hearth glows dimly. Outside, the moon hovers low and pale, casting soft light across the rooftop. Somewhere in the distance, a dog sighs. A child murmurs in sleep. The clay walls around you, flawed and patched, seem to breathe with you. Fragile, yes, but warm and sheltering. You think of the gods watching from their high temples, distant, strange, demanding. You think of the ziggurat, the barley fields, the river, the dust, but mostly you think of your mat, your family, the simple, stubborn piece of a home still holding its shape. Your breathing slows. The warmth of the day seeps away, leaving behind a cocoon of quiet. The kind of quiet you don't notice until it wraps itself around you. Safe, gentle, unbroken. And as your eyes finally close, you realize you made it through the day in a Sumerian mudbrick house. Barely, but still. Sleep comes, slow and deep, and tomorrow can wait. End of script. Sweet dreams.